What is up, YouTube? Welcome to Panfro Games. I'm here to review Cyberpunk 2077. So, this game is obviously pretty controversial, and I do have a disclosure that I played the game originally on PS5, played 4 hours of it. It crashed about 3 or 4 times, and I had to refund it because it was honestly an unplayable, incredibly ugly version, and I cannot recommend the PS4 or PS5 versions, which may correlate to the Xbox and Xbox Series X versions as well. So I ended up playing 60 hours on the PC. I have a 1070 GTX card, which is not the best card on the market for sure. However, this is definitely a card that most people would have or have around in the same power range. In my 60 hours of exploring Cyberpunk 2077, I think the city was pretty impressive at first. When you start up the game, you see these massive skyscrapers, you see these different like rundown neighborhoods. There's a lot of life, a lot of NPCs to it as well. However, by the 60-hour mark of this game, the world really just becomes a loading screen where it's just hanging on the background. We're just going from point A to point B, and you're not really ever interacting with the world outside of main quests and side quest stories, which I think is really unfortunate because there's a lot of room for this. Like an example, there's no strip clubs, there's no brain dances. There's no bars you can go to. You just sit down and have a drink. There's no side activities. There's no way to play poker. There's no way to play darts or any other futuristic activity you could possibly do. There's no real side activity for driving or any sort of challenges like that. You sort of just exist in this world that you actually can't interact in. It's sort of like there's a bubble around you and you're allowed to see and touch, but you can't actually go in and have a good time with anything, which is I think is very unfortunate. I think this is something that they can improve with a patch, maybe lots of patches, honestly. But right now, currently, the world is just a loading screen. I will say the world also breaks down immersively when the AI starts bugging out and messes up. And this comes down to the next big point of the world is this game has no object permanence. And object permanence is if you are looking at an NPC and you walk away 5 feet and look back at the NPC, that NPC's totally changed into a different character completely, or they just disappeared. Because in this game, the world actually loads around you, which I think is a lot of the problems of this game. So when you see a lot of these bugs on the internet with how cars are flying through and things are messed up, it's because this game lacks object permanence. So that car only exists where, like, when you see it is because you're right there. If you're on the other side of that map, that car would not exist. So I think that's a huge programming issue, and that is something that they really can't fix with patches either. So I'm not sure how they can ever fix that flaw, but for me, it really took me out of my immersive open world experience, just having like NPCs just load in all the time, same with cars, and when they load in, things would also break too, which is even worse, or the worst case scenario, things was soft locked for me in main quest and side quest objectives because of this object permanence. Also, fun fact, the weather is also a filter, which is really disappointing. So when it's raining, it's just a filter in your screen. There's not like rain puddles. There's no dynamic lighting or weather to this or anything like that, which is unfortunate. And I will say there's no apartments you can buy. You're always in your crappy little apartment for the entire game, which is really unfortunate. The combat of Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty interesting. You can use from snipers to shotguns, from quick hacks, which is essentially magic, and including melee weapons like katanas and the mantis blades. And when you level up your character, you get perk points. And with these perk points, you can throw it into a skill tree to increase the damage or give yourself another effect when you're using certain types of weapons. And you can also get more perk points just by using those weapons in combat, very similar to how Skyrim does their leveling up system. However, the issue is that's where the depth ends when it comes to combat. All guns relatively are the same, and their skill trees are all pretty similar. And melee builds are completely busted right now, and definitely the best to go through if you just want to beat the game quickly. Quick hacks are like magic, and I think they're pretty fun. However, after my 60 hours of going through the game, there really wasn't any diversity in my quick hacks. I would buy better hacking skills, but no locations would give me anything unique or special to hack. I was always doing the same quick hack spells over and over and over again, which honestly was pretty boring. I will say that the game is relatively easy, so I do suggest playing on hard or very hard. Even on hard, though, if you're using a pretty good build, which is relatively easy to do in this game, considering a lot of the things are busted once you start combining different trees. I would suggest going to very hard at some point if you want a real challenge, but I think hard is a nice sweet spot. And then going into the dialogue options of 2077, I will say that from my 60 hours and from seeing multiple endings, that your choices do not actually matter. The only thing that matters is completing all the major side quests, which are pretty impossible to sort of tell what's important when all the markers on the map are the same. From literally buying a car to an important side quest have the same yellow symbol. So I don't blame you if you miss some of the best quests in the game, because the game doesn't really help you out in trying to find these quests at all, which I think is rather unfortunate. And speaking of trying to find quests, driving around in the game is relatively poor, and I just started using the fast travel system as much as I could because I could not stand driving in third person. It was just really unfortunate. But overall, I would consider the gameplay and the shooting good, just not a lot of depth to it, and the guns don't really have any difference between them, even through different manufacturers. Just no difference. Different elemental damage on your guns, just apply an element, but there's only a visual difference. Damage wise, they're all the same, like from poison to fire damage is relatively the same. Combat scenarios essentially start playing out the same once you're just walking around and shooting. And stealth doesn't really have any proper systems to it besides you just stay crouched to be in stealth. And there's just some perks that give you bonus damage for being that crouch stance when no one's seeing you. But besides that, stealth is rather useless. There's also not a lot of quest variety in this game, where a lot of the quests, especially in the beginning of the game, are you just go and kill these enemies. And that is about 80% of the quests in the game. The meaty side quests are from like Judy and Pan Am and I forgot this other dude, but there's a couple of other characters in the game. And there's like 5, right? Those quests are actually really good, and I would say almost as good or even better than the main quests at times. And like I said, you do need to complete these quests in order to get the real ending choices or to get better versions of the endings you could be getting. So 100% trying to seek out those characters and get those quests done. But every other side quest just feels sort of like busy work, you shooting, you just trying to level up. There's nothing to really explore, and there's no real landmarks in this world either when you're going around. So these side quests don't really offer too much besides you just trying to get more EXP, which I find to be really unfortunate. The story and characters of Cyberpunk 2077 is relatively okay, and I think the characters are a lot better than the story at the end of the day. I really enjoyed Keanu Reeves as Johnny. I don't think Keanu Reeves was necessarily the best actor for Johnny, but I really enjoyed what Johnny brought to the table for this game, especially after his side quest line, which is completely optional, which is sort of crazy how a lot of the best content in this game is 100% optional when the main quest is only 20 hours long, and it sort of feels like they could not connect the side content in a meaningful way to the main quest. As I mentioned before, Judy, Pan Am, and Rivers are also very important side characters that have some of the best stories and maybe even the best stories in the entire game, including the main quest. The main quest doesn't really have any choices that matter. 98% of the choices are exactly the same and the same outcome. The only choice that actually matters in the main quest is the very last one. And there is one quest towards the beginning of the game where you do have different outcomes, but there is no repercussions of those outcomes. And it sort of shows what CD Projekt Red was trying to do with this game, but I feel like because of the crunch they had to work and the missed project management on this game, that they weren't able to make quests with a lot of branching path like quest lines where your choices did matter. The one quest that has that was the E3 demo where it's doing the trade deal with the Maelstrom, which is unfortunate because I assumed this game would have more quests like that, but yet the only quest they were showing off in marketing, like repeatedly in those Night City updates, is really that quest, which is sort of unfortunate. I was really expecting more from an RPG studio. But the story at the end of the day is okay. I think it's very rushed at the end. The main quest does get really good, and then the moment it starts getting really good, I'm really enjoying all these characters. It just starts up being like, well, you're at the point of no return now. Time to pick your different endings, which is just one conversation with Johnny. So Sort of disappointed that it all comes down to one choice. None of my other choices matter in the past. It just matters if I completed other side quests to unlock those new endings. But the endings of those side quests don't actually affect anything at all. So I think that's rather unfortunate. Now just going into some more just random stuff of how I feel about the game. I wish this game had a faction system, sort of like Fallout New Vegas or any sort of Bethesda game, honestly. There's a bunch of different gangs, but a lot of the gangs you really can't tell the difference between. They all look relatively the same, and they all sort of have the same weapons. There's a few gangs that are different, like the animals are all like pretty much melee focused, and they're massive and buff. And the Maelstrom are like, oh hey, like we just all robots, but it doesn't really matter. It's sort of just flavor, but they all fight you the same ways, and it's sort of lame. And you can't work with one group and another group hates you for it. I really wish there was some more depth to that, because at the end of the day, like I'm just helping cops out, and which is weird because I'm like the number one criminal in the city, and it's just weird that it just sort of breaks immersion. And like the gangs don't really interact with you in any meaningful way either. It just feels very unfortunate that I just can't roleplay in this game, and I just can't make a decision that truly matters at the end of the day. Overall, Cyberpunk 2077 came out in a completely broken state on consoles, so I cannot even recommend purchasing that. On PC, I do recommend getting it, but it will be better in 6 months to a year when more patches come out, because I had tons of soft locks, tons of bugs, so many things I couldn't even capture. I had a couple system crashes on console and PC because of this game. And hopefully, like, the more patches come out, they fix more of these bugs. But at the end of the day, it's hard to recommend buying this game because I do consider it a broken product. In my opinion, I truly think Cyberpunk 2077 is a very okay game. I think it's close to being good. I think it'll be a good game once a lot of the bugs get fixed. However, I can't see it becoming an amazing game without a Cyberpunk 2077 2. It's just, I think there's a lot of deeply flawed systems. I think a rushed main story, nothing to really do in the world, and you really can't interact with side characters outside of their quests. You like can't just call them up and hang out with them. You can just do a couple of the same like dialogue choices over the phone that don't actually ever change throughout the game, which is incredibly sad because I really want to love these characters more, but the game doesn't want me to. It doesn't give me the opportunity to. So my final review score for Cyberpunk 2077 is a 6.5 out of 10. It is an okay game. It is not a game that is necessarily worth your $60 or $70 right now. I mean, it's not even purchasable digital on PSN, so that should say a lot for it right now as well. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching my review of Cyberpunk 2077 and reaching this point in the video. If you enjoy my channel and this video, please subscribe. I'm trying to make it to 300 subscribers, and I'll catch you guys next time with more reviews and other video game content. Peace out.